Hello, Dan Trudeau here. I'm the VP and Executive Recruiter at PRA USA. And several months ago, I put a video up here about the ongoing worker shortage, the debate around it, and the real reasons behind it. Now, at the time, the debate centered around two opposing points of view. One side felt that this worker shortage was due to the enhanced unemployment benefits, the eviction moratorium, things like that. Basically, the COVID relief packages the government had put through, and the idea that these were keeping people from entering the job market. On the other side were people who said that the shortage was due to companies not paying a living wage. Now, here we are at the end of the year. All those extended unemployment benefits, the eviction moratorium, those enhanced benefits are gone. At the same time, companies are paying more money, and based on data coming from companies looking into 2022, it looks like compensation salary will keep increasing. So where does that leave us? Still in the middle of a worker shortage. Why this is still happening goes back to what I had discussed in that video, which is an overall demographic shift happening in the United States labor market. In other words, there are more people leaving the job market than coming into it. We're seeing real economic stress from this and no relief really in sight because, well, in my opinion, we're not talking about the real problem still. The good news is the months that have passed since that video have given us a more nuanced view of the worker shortage, of this demographic shift due to the data we've collected. First, it really has validated that the older workforce retiring or just bowing out of full participation in the labor market is a very real thing, and it has had that uptick and continues to be a driver of this worker shortage because we had the big push of new retirements in 2020, and 2021 continued that trend. There are still people bowing out even maybe a decade before they would have, but now we also know why they bowed out. What did they cite? COVID concerns, better savings picture, shift in priorities, more family support. What happened is COVID forced them to maybe make some changes or create new opportunities for them within their families to get out of the workforce earlier than they had planned on, or just work in a more reduced capacity. And again, this created a gap that has not been filled by people coming in. In other words, a very large percentage of what we had expected the workforce to be over the next decade has bowed out. There have been more younger workers returning to the workforce. They had stayed out of the workforce because maybe their savings was better. Maybe they had a shift in priorities in terms of what they wanted to do. A lot of people weren't coming in because things like maybe daycare expenses were too expensive. Those things were all also keeping younger workers out of the market. More of those young workers who had been on the sidelines have started coming back into the market. And as predicted, it hasn't made a huge dent in things. Maybe it's eased it up a little bit, but has not solved the problem. Now, where does that leave businesses? Well, the smart ones have started paying more, have started offering maybe better benefits, working conditions, career paths, etc., doing whatever they can to become a more attractive employer. It has given them access to workers that others haven't, because there are still a lot of companies who are just clamoring or hoping for a return to the status quo when they had more people to choose from. Salaries were a little lower, therefore employment expenses were lower, but that's really not going to happen, and they need to figure out how to move forward. Now, there was one, I guess we'd call it phenomenon, that happened in the past several months that I hadn't predicted in the last video, though looking back, I probably should have, and that's what's been termed the Great Resignation. The term the Great Resignation was coined by Texas A&M professor Andrew Klotz back in August of 2021 when this whole thing started. What happened was that August, this past August, a record 4.3 million Americans quit their jobs. And they didn't quit their jobs to collect unemployment or, come off the job market. They quit their jobs because of better jobs. And if you think about it, it makes sense. The worker shortage opened up doors to people that probably weren't open before. You take that phenomenon with the reassessment of life priorities that have come with the last couple of years, because, most of us have been through it, right? So people decide, I want more fulfilling work. I want something with a better career path. I just want something that makes me happier and feel better about my job. Well, now doors that were shut a couple years ago are opening up. So it makes sense that people would decide, I'm out of here. I'm going to go for that better thing. In fact, there are so many opportunities open now that being a good employer is no guarantee that you're going to be able to keep your people. A lot of people who work in, areas that frankly were high stress, low paying jobs like restaurant work or a lot of retail positions. They might have opportunities to work in an office or just have, like I said, a different career path now that not only pays better, but they're happier doing the work. It's no surprise they took those opportunities. And an interesting twist to this was that 1/3 of the people who left their positions left to start their own business. Your ability to be self-employed in certain fields is greater now due to the technology we have, the access to things. There's opportunities to be your own boss, and it's no surprise that some people took them, but 1/3 is a huge number. That's a big change to the employment landscape. So this all started in August of 2021, and it slowed down a bit, but polls still show that a full 46% of working Americans say that they're still considering finding something new. So here we are at the end of 2021. A lot of people wanted a return to normalcy. That's not happening. A lot of people wanted better career paths and options, and that's happening. There's the shift of power has definitely swung more towards the workers right now. Okay, so with all of this that's gone down in 2021, the big question is, what's in store for the new year? What's in store for 2022? The fact is that, of course, we can't say with too much certainty. That said, having gone through all the stuff that we've been discussing, there are certain things that we can say with a pretty high sense of probability. The first of those, of course, is that this change in the demographics for the workforce, it's hard to see how they won't continue. It's hard to see how the workforce won't continue shrinking, especially since we don't have things like immigration reform, which could, bring some people back into our market here, which I discussed in another video. That sort of thing really doesn't seem to be on the table in a major way. So this demographic shift is probably going to continue, which means that the worker shortage will probably continue, which means that things like issues with the supply chain and everything may very well continue to be headaches into the new year. So where does this leave workers? Well, like I said, for workers, again, more opportunities, more abilities to change things up in your career, to make things better, to be considered for things that maybe several years ago you wouldn't have been considered for. These are all good options. And while there are definitely things like the escalating cost of goods and childcare and stuff like that working against you, there's no doubt workers and prospective employees have more power now than they did a year ago. To the other side of the thing for employers, they're not going to be able to make any headway. They're not going to be able to make anything better unless they just start letting go of their old assumptions. The crux of the problem is a demographic shift that they have very little ability to change. So you have to ask yourself within your own business, how do I cope with this? How can I make myself a more attractive employer? How can I retain people better? Knowing that you can't retain everybody because, again, all these doors opening, even being a good employer doesn't mean you won't lose people. So how are you going to deal with that? How are you going to deal with things if certain key positions can't be filled anymore or take 10 times longer to fill? What are your workarounds on that? It's a new year ahead and in many ways a new world with new challenges. So it's time to bring some new ideas to the table. It's time to tackle things from a different angle. So we have to individually start breaking out of our boxes and our bubbles that we've been in and start getting creative. Start thinking about the 21st century. Not for a lot of people, they're still thinking along 20th century lines. And we're 20 years in now. It's time to change it up. Things are very different now. They're not going back. So let's figure out how to be successful going forward. Thanks for watching the video, and make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the PRA USA YouTube channel. We're going to be having videos like this with insights about the overall job market, career advice, perspective on everything from hiring to changing your career to starting your career, etc. We have 30 years of experience in the recruiting business. Use that experience to get the career that you deserve.